Right, as Mr. Machado... Send a drone, exactly. I'd lost my papers. As Mr. Machado very kindly pointed out, this is the industry session, and we're going to talk through some of the issues that the industry has got. We've got a really interesting panel. It's my pleasure to introduce Alberto Pietra, who is from CELEX ES, but I hasten to add is today representing ASD, the European Aerospace and Defence Association, more than 3,000 members. Emmanuel Prévinaire, when we were told that we were having an Oscar award winner speak to us, obviously I hoped it was going to be Angelina Jolie. I'm delighted to say that we in fact have someone who's got much more of a grasp of what's going on than Angelina, and that is Emmanuel, who is an Oscar award winner. So there you go. Malcolm Connolly from Cyberhawk is also with us. Thank you, Malcolm. And Edgars Rozentals from Helico. We saw some of your exhibition earlier, so thank you for that. So let us start directly by asking you, if you would please, Alberto, to kick us off. Thank you.
Authorities, distinguished guests, good afternoon, and thank you to the organization for inviting ASD here. On behalf of ASD, the Aerospace and Defence Industry Association of Europe, which represents the aeronautics, space, defense and the security industries in Europe, with 15 major companies and 27 member associations representing more than 3,000 companies. We wish to present our view on the present status of RPAS. It's a classic presentation by slides, not so innovative, such as Andrew's overture. More than aircraft, RPAS are new aircraft, new systems in the aviation environment, continuously evolving in order to assure multiple tasks, to provide adequate information, superiority, through cyber-secured networks, to allow even more operation than manned aircraft. In order to cope with the current and the future challenges, industry has identified the key enablers needed to design, develop, and safely operate RPAS in the open skies. And this is what this presentation is about. Many applications call for RPAS. We are in a situation in which the development activities have been carried out by industry without a clear regulation framework. For most of such applications, to fly outside the segregated airspace is a precondition to operate. We start from a very complex situation with many actors into an environment which is presently very safe. RPAs, to carry out the application we have seen before, needed to access the airspace, and this is the only way to exploit, to unlock their true potential, by letting them fly side by side with other manned and unmanned aircraft. The introduction of RPAS into the airspace must happen without impact on existing safety, without reducing airspace capacity. Of course, such challenges imply that RPAS must be able to interact with the existing network. The functioning of RPAS must be ensured by means of a cyber-secured network, airborne and ground segments, and they must have adequate airframe propulsion, reliability, and avionics, detect and avoid, advanced comms, including SATCOM, sensors, radio links capable to operate beyond line of sight. ASD's view on RPAS is based into two pillars, two enablers. The first is need of funding for technology research and development. The second, regulation for insertion into civil airspace. There is an enormous economic potential, a large RPAS market for civil, state, and military operations. And this is only the first step. Let's not fall beyond the timeline. The RPAS technologies, developments, can generate many spin-offs in the longer term, covering all the general aviation, rotorcraft, business jet, airliners, cargo, and so on. As was mentioned before, what happened in the 70s when we had 5 cockpit crew. In 2050, 1 or 0 crew is expected. The flight path 2050 calls for pilotless, so autonomous and manned aircraft seamlessly integrated. Progress to date. Presently, ASD, the European industry, is involved with the European Defence Agency, ADA, for the initial roadmap and in programs such as CGAT or MIDCAS, which is the development and the demonstration of an advanced sense and avoid anti-collision system. With the European Commission for the European roadmap and the EU communication on RPAS, strongly involved within the CESAR joint undertaking in the RPAS definition phase. Also with the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, for the launch of the rule-making activity, and with ICAO for the establishment of a US study group later on named RPAS panel. ASD wishes to stress the importance of addressing all types of RPAS, all categories, civil or state, including military operations, ensuring the synchronization among different parallel streamlines, such as regulatory actions, R&D efforts, standardization initiatives that must be converged into a unique funnel to be synchronized and to be synergic. Accelerating regulations and the demonstration and testing. Industry need appropriate flight lab to carry out development and demo. In a few years, RPAS might represent 10% of the present European business, which is employing more than 8,000 people and generating 190 billion. In order to keep the EU's advantage, we still have action are needed right now. Others are not waiting for Europe. we cannot lose the momentum. European industry is really a key player in this field. RPAS is seen as another airspace user, which needs access to airspace, and it means that existing air traffic management systems shall potentially slightly adapted to that, but does not impact the current airspace in terms of safety or capacity. And based on these 3 points, the European industry is developing capabilities, competencies, and experience from the concept to the RPAS realization, encompassing micro and mini US up to medium altitude, low endurance, fixed and rotary wing, and involving itself with the EU for the insertion. Europe cannot and does not want to be a follower. Therefore, there are 2 aspects, 2 main challenges. The first one is on the regulatory side. EU has the leading role in allowing the deployment of RPAS, and industry would welcome a risk-based EC proposal, EAS regulation. EU needs industry expertise if it has a will to succeed in RPAS integration. Industry must be a full member of JARUS and all the other regulatory initiatives. The second challenge is on the research and development side to ensure R&D deployment in order to cover the identified critical technological gaps. Mature, the R&D implies real demos in test facilities. High technology readiness level is required. Clear regulations requirements, technologies developed by industry are to be recognized by legislator. R&D and the regulation are pre-competitive activities, and industry is fully committed on this. But what is essential is that more funding is necessary. More resources on CESAR are needed in order not to distract existing CESAR project, but to add additional fundings to support such activities. To the end, summary. RPAS is a unique opportunity for Europe. Insertion in the ATM system is the key enabler. European industry is a key player, investing substantially. RPAS will be an important part of future aviation, contributing to generate employment. The estimation is 150,000 direct jobs in 2050, innovation and growth in Europe. Regulation needs to progress with an active industry participation. Substantial funding must be added, not diverted from existing developments. The coordination steering group under EC leadership with EASA, CESAR, EDA, and industry must be fully involved and continue in order to control, monitor, and manage R&D funding and the insertion of RPAS into the air traffic. Thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alberto. As I mentioned, the next speaker is probably the only Oscar Award winner you will ever hear up close and personal, unless you live a very different life to me. If you were lucky enough to be at the demonstration earlier this afternoon, you would have seen a lot of work being done in the RPAS area. But if you've been to the movies in the last 20 years, you've almost certainly seen the work of our next speaker. It's my pleasure to welcome Emmanuel Prévinaire from Flying Camp. Thank you, Emmanuel.
it's a true thing. It's smaller maybe than you might think, but it takes 25 years to get this. We started in 1988. I started in 1988 with an unmanned helicopter with a camera, 16mm film, and then 35. So I thank the European Commission and the Ministry of Transport truly, because we think we can help Europe to become a leader, and the industry partners and all the people working in this field, in the technology field, can definitely help. And we are very pleased to be invited. I'm very pleased to be invited here. And really thank also my mother, my father. No, forget it. All right. So I have a tool here. Oh, okay. So drone age. Pilot is on the ground. The aircraft is in the air. That makes a huge difference. It changed everything. This was 2007. This is what? 8 years from now. You see, it takes time before things happen. We started in 1988, and this was published in 2007, and now it's moving, so it's time. This was the design of this helicopter, the SARA, Special Aerial Response Automatic Helicopter, started in 2004. And this was a big step for us because we immediately understood that robotic is the new era. I mean, the 21st century is all about robotic. And the airplane now, all the airplanes that are flying, and you probably people who flew yesterday or today, they were flying in an aircraft that is completely automatic if need be. We did that system for 5 markets that we image, IMAGE, 5 markets that we looked and interesting for the development of drones. In each of those markets, there's a certain sub-segment. And each of them, they own, potential. And the potential is different depending on where you position yourself. The potential is not necessarily connected to the quantity. It could be connected to the added value. I insist on that. Bigger system tends to have higher added value, carrying payload that are more sophisticated, bring data that are more precise. So please consider, when you talk about weight limitation, noise limitation, there are situations where high added value, maybe bigger platform, are still really valuable because they might save life, or because, let's say, a nuclear power plant, and you want to approach it. Noise is not an issue when you approach a nuclear power plant. You might save thousands of people there, and a bigger platform might be able to do it better with wind resistance, for example. Art and science, well, this is the wording here, because this is the Academy of Motion Picture Art and Sciences. So what do I mean by sciences? And mostly to have a soul inside. Robots are a fear for many people because they lack of humanity. Unless we give it embedded into the system, we give that humanity. And the European Commission is there probably to make sure we keep a soul into those systems. And this is very important. So those robots will not go against us one day. And it's all about the design. It's not about mathematics. You can apply the maths and say you can go that fast, you can go that high, and it would synchronize with this and that. It's all about make sure it's an extension of yourself. And think if you love yourself and all the others, then you will make that an extension in a certain way or another. So that's a very important key point. 26 years today experience. We have done it. We have done everywhere. We have flown in every kind of situation, from -30 in Canada to +50 in Death Valley, with clients that are asking to do things where they don't care about weather. It's just about do the job, do the flight, and whatever. So we have learned that flying faster, closer, lower is something you have to care about. So the question for the operators is not about can you do it? It's about is it safe to do it? So the key language between the camera operator and our pilot is the camera operator will ask, can you go lower? No. He will ask, is it safe to go lower? And then the pilot will reply, yeah, no, it's not safe. I could go lower, but it's not safe. So that's the way you phrase it is very important into the safety issues with crew coordination. And as we know, the training of the crew is essential in the safety of the operation. We have done it all. This was in 1989 from the commemoration of the French Revolution. We got authorized by François Mitterrand himself to fly through the Arc de Triomphe, starting from the obelisk and chasing the helicopter. It was the opening, the credit shot for the opening ceremony of the 200th anniversary of the French Revolution. It was a few, I mean, 2 years ago for Smurfs 2, the movie, we were again approved to fly in Paris, the Jardin des Tuileries. It took 3 months. So a president could do that and get the approval. And the administration, of course, was longer. But we agreed totally on the rules that are to be applied to unmanned systems as far as they fly in areas where a lot of people are living. This is, again, about the extension of your own body. You want to limit your extension to the freedom of others. So we have been everywhere. We have witnessed a lot of different situations in terms of authorization, and we are ready to help the community here to learn from there and participate to those elaboration of regulation. Drone technology is living through a chasm, and we are having tough time at Flying Cam right now with many different countries, different regulations worldwide. Or I remember I was in a trade show in Los Angeles 4 years ago, and showing our equipment, very proud of it. And we got a producer coming in with a letter, with a stamp of FAA on that letter saying, from now on, all operation, commercial operation of drones is forbidden in the United States. It's like you suddenly got a stab on your heart, and you just have to stop doing job. This hurt us a lot. In Europe, it was fragmented. Thank you. It was not just one stop. That's the good point. Yeah, I mean, we would have done the same thing in Europe. Forget it. I will not be here. Forget it. China was not enough. I mean, though China right now helps us a lot to move forward. The chasm, as you remember, maybe probably nobody remembers because it's too late. 1865, there was a flagman that has to be walking in front of the cars to tell people a car is coming, be careful. It's true. And they had to walk at 3 to 4 meters per kilometers per hour in cities, slower, and they could run at 6 kilometers per hour in countryside. But understand, you have to understand, there were horses in front of the cars before. There were horses pulling the cars. Suddenly, no more horses. They are inside. Horsepower. You have to understand the shift is amazing. And we are living through the same situation. No pilot in the plane. It took a lot of struggle between lobbyists. The railway were pushing to go through and push the cars out of the way. There was a lot of struggle also, and regulations were following later, of course. Oh, not working? I'm pushing the right button. Yeah, better push it hard. So 100 years for the aviation, and today we are there. Okay, important here. It's not about the weight. Oh, come on. You have 800 people in an A380 now, in the airplane. 800 people. It's a full village. Why do you accept that? And is there a chance they could come out of the plane if something catastrophic happened? No way. Why do you accept it? Because of safety factors. 0.0000 risk. So everybody goes in without question. It's about safety factor. So please, don't make the law too rough. Look at the detail. And this will make Europe leading in front of USA, because we are involved in USA development now. And they're quite rough. American way, very strong. Okay, we can make it more detailed and more adapted to realities. That was my father on the left bottom. So I'm born in it. My mother is just right there behind. and she's pregnant of me. So you can see that I'm there since this 1956, the year I was born, to everything now. Now this is what is happening today with military. Those guys are in Las Vegas. We just met one 3-4 days ago doing a demo of a system, and he told us somebody is taking off in Afghanistan. They take over, use satellite with 3-second delay, and they do whatever they want during 10, 16, 20 hours. So this is the present time with aircraft that are as big as nearly a private jet. FAA, we are part of a team of 7 people that got last year an exemption, and I personally wrote part of the safety issues in the regulation. It's still a very slow process. Why? Because even though the decision was taken up there, for the time to that decision to be understood by all the people who had to follow, it takes a while. And they were, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this case? So before you do something, make sure you have worked on the way it will be disseminated inside the network of people that are responsible. And there are solutions to find. I found an amazing software recently that is providing a way to log data of all the flights that are presented to be approved, and use the computer science as much as you can to make things already organized in the way they are in the software. So people will have a guideline that is already there. They don't have to guess or be themselves interacting with something wrong. Silicon pilot. The 21st century is about silicon pilot. It will be tough for people to be in an airplane without a pilot in front. I guess I would want one, especially for weather. Weather is so tough with aircraft, and there are situations that computers still do not cope with. So I believe this will be the main challenge for autopilots, and maybe find solutions like go to the next airport if they feel they are at the limit. But still, there are always situations where the computer is facing a challenge. So it's difficult to say that autonomous flight with people on board the aircraft will build something, but probably one day, I don't know, we'll see. The press in US, for example, I don't know in Europe, and press is pushing a lot to get those drones out. Please resist a little bit because it will be too fast for privacy, probably main reason. They promote the drones, they say they are positive, and the press is always wanting to get more information through intrusion in private life. So I know how easy it is to use those and to get information and closer to the private bubble that we all have. You do not accept a dog passing the fence of your garden and go into your neighbor, but it's so easy with the drone to go above the fence. And this is education. So I would really stress about education of the young kids about drones and what you can do with it and what is not accepted. It's just about education. It's a new toy. Everybody wants to go to the end of it, but you have to educate that there's a limit, and that is a safety bubble and privacy bubble. The quantity of the market. This is roughly the aviation market. 10,000 per year are sold or manufactured in civil and military field. This is a rough number. I don't want to go into detail. In the market size of UAV versus size, I'm talking vertical takeoff and landing because it is a specialty. So of course, consider that there are also fixed wing and hybrid balloon, whatever. So this is, again, you see differentiation by weight. Please forget that. It's about safety factor. What is a safety factor? What did you put in a system to make it safe? Logistic is so easy. That's the beauty of unmanned system. They go in the trunk, in the box, unfold, and soon in your pocket, or soon there, just unleash, and they will go out. So that's part of the beauty of unmanned system. Electric. Okay, batteries. Be careful with batteries. The consumption will go so fast that, I guess sometimes you say, well, it's only batteries, but you need a generator, or you need a power plant to provide this electricity. Okay, so if you have a generator that consumes gas to produce electricity to charge your battery, where's the benefit? But this is about technology evolution, and this is, we know batteries are moving towards safety and reliability. Communication, we need a space for communication that is reliable. It's all existing technology. Your cellular phone is working, you know, there's no limit. You are how many in a room, you can all individually use your cellular phone, there's no limit there. Telemetry, so we gather 200 parameters on board the Flying Amsara system. Again, it's about safety. We know everything that is happening on board, sitting on the ground. Anything goes wrong, we will know in advance, and we'll be able to do preventive actions in a way that was never before available. Sensors are becoming so small. You have tons of sensors in your body, but it becomes the same in robotic. So you can even send, something is going on, I can do this in the prevention. So this is part of safety. The value chain. It's not about drone only. You have sensors, payload developers that are participating to the development of the technology. You have, of course, UAV developers. Usually they are not the same. Payload is always something different, and there are so many payload possible. You have UAV operators, those that are buying a drone and operating for services, or just because they are part of a big company and they are a business unit among them. And then data providers that are processing the data, organizing them so that the end user has visibility on what he needs and as fast as it can be. So it's not just drones. It's a complete value chain with different people coming from different technology aspects. The emergency response is one of them. So they need, in every steps, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. They need information, intelligence, aerial intelligence. And the same for our system. It's multi-talented. So again, in every single application, the rule has to be different. Why? Aerial work. When you want to fly on an altiport, I mean in an aircraft, and if you want to land on an airport that's in the mountain, you need a certain certification. When you fly in an helicopter for that kind of work, you need a certain certification. When you do crop dusting, you need a certain certification with processes that are absolutely connected to the kind of work you do. When you carry load like that, you need a certain certification, etc. So the general aviation has developed really detailed regulation depending on what you do. And I'm still talking about aerial work. Again, another one. And then the video you will see right after, I hope it will work, is just the footage we did on the James Bond movie, the Skyfall. So you will see that it's very extreme, but yeah, it's okay because everything was pre-planned. The street you will see and the Grand Bazaar rooftop was hired by production. There were letters given to people saying, this is what we will do at that time. If you have any objection, let us know, and we'll do it from that hour to that hour, etc. So things can be done as far as you pre-plan it. Takeoff area. So I don't want to show too much images. You go to the theater, it's better. Yeah, you see it's extreme, and it was mostly manual piloting with an ace pilot. And this is an element also I want to stress. In USA right now, we're working on regulation. They have no care about how to test the pilot skill. And there are situations in aerial work that requires high-end pilot skill. But usually they choose people that are in the real aviation, I mean manned aviation, as judge. They have no idea what are the pilot skills required for certain application. So they do not present any exam for that, etc. I got a commercial pilot license with IFI rating. I had to pass through aerobatic with a judge. I have to go for 40 hours of training on flight simulator. I had to go this and this test. And they are tough. I mean, no GPS at the time I did it, etc. They were very tough, just to be professional. Right now, we got to DGAC, do a figure 8, precision landing, takeoff, great, you have it. Wow, don't try to do that with this. Never. And it's even bad. I should put the first sentence there. Don't try to do that at home. This is dangerous, blah, 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 because it requires a lot of attention. So that's a very important key system. Pilot skill has to be judged. There is no judge right now. When I started to fly a remote control helicopter, we were 2 or 3 guys in Belgium. There was no judge when we did contest. The judge were people that didn't know that hovering is the most difficult thing to do. And we have to tell them, yeah, this hovering was good. It differs 10 on 10. Well, hovering, no, it's just over. No. So there's no judge today. But there are, in fact, FAI competition. You have a reservoir of high-educated people working in the hobby field, but high-end, with FAI contest, well organized. Use that as your base for having the first judge for certifying pilot skills. So there is a good way to do it there. International. Flying Cam exists today because we have international activity. We sold one system to the Chinese television. So the regulation in Europe will dictate the way manufacturers in Europe will build their system. And then you have to think internationally also, because if the regulations in Europe are not adapted to international views, we need to export to live through. So you have to keep a view on international basis. It's not easy, but so live broadcast application will be a major market for big machine like us or smaller one. And this is the push of the press and all the people in this field. You have electronic news gathering, electronic field production, satellite news gathering. So this will be a very first thing to look for. We can help there. I'm not going to go into detail here. Here I want to just come back to 2 things. This is live broadcast television. We are in Saudi Arabia. You have about 5,000 people in the stadium. Of course, you do not apply the same rules as you would do for an open pit mine in Australia with nobody there. And so the rule has to be adapted to the work you do. And this is very important. Production, control on production. You do not produce a tool that will be used for professional use the same way as in the hobby field where I started. When you have a specs from a manufacturer, it will say this motor can hold 100 amps. All right, and then you test it, 50 only. Ah, yeah, but was 100 amps continuous during 1 second? Wait a minute, continuous during 1 second. So all the specs of the unmanned system at the low key were done under hobby-style production. When we started the Flying Cam Sarah, we faced that situation all the time. We buy something, test it up, do the specs. No way. When you use real aviation components, they are accurate to the spot. Yeah, they are. They must be, because people are there inside. So this is to push up the regulation and to verify that specs are correct when somebody is advertising something. Academy training, I said again, training is extremely important. It's 75% of the quality of the job. I was invited in China by RPAS, and there was somebody presenting the option to have air freight with a cargo plane and unmanned pilot, having one guy in a control station handling 10 planes. Yeah, and they said the accident happened mostly due to the crew on board. So this way, with one guy having an automatic system, it will be better. Be careful, if you have one guy in a control station that goes wrong with 10 planes, this is 10 planes that will go wrong. Be careful with that scale factor. It's not because you can handle automatically a lot of function. If we have one thing wrong in the base of the automatic control, everything goes wrong. It's a cascade system. So training is very important in that. Maintenance, repair, and overhaul, same way. Yeah, I'm gonna go faster. Maintenance is obvious, and that's it. Field experience, it's not replaceable. Usually, when a pilot starts with us, he will have to do 3 jobs with us as a trainee, etc. We fly at night. We see better at night. It's just about coordination with real traffic, and that's it. New way to explore the planet. We have been everywhere. Saudi Arabia. This is Korea. This is Hong Kong. And safety, safety is a key element. We have developed below. Last thing, and I'm finished. Freedom. Keep space, segregated airspace where people can experiment. And this will help the technology to move forward. There are some space already in Spain, Atlantis, for example, airport, etc. So keep some area in Europe where the people can experiment and develop the technology with as much freedom as possible. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Do not try this at home, he said. I think he meant do not ride your motorbike across the roof of any house you choose to meet. Of course, another option, Emmanuel, is that maybe for the red flag thing, we could, in front of every drone, you should have another drone waving a red flag. That would be one way to do it. Our next speaker is Malcolm Connolly, who has stepped in very kindly quite late in the proceedings. He's from Cyberhawk. And I guess, Malcolm, my first question to you is, do you too give all of your drones female names, just out of interest? Because it seems good. Oh, I'm pleased to hear that. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me here. Today I am going to give you hopefully a little bit of an insight into operating RPAS commercially in an industrial environment. Emmanuel touched on quite a lot of the kind of pain points that we're feeling as well as an operator in terms of harmonisation of regulations, etc. But let's try and work out how this works first. There we go. What I'm going to cover, a little bit of background about the company, the kind of drivers for why we exist. It's gone into automatic crazy mode here. Current applications in industry. Now this is the kind of window of industrial inspection and surveying that we operate in. I'm going to give you a case study just to kind of understand the sort of savings and things like that. The state of the regulation. We've operated in about 20 countries over 4 continents. Can you hear me? No? Okay. So I'm just recovering from a cold, so excuse my voice. And then I'll talk a little bit about training competency and future applications. So while I'm up here speaking, we've been operating UAVs for about 7 years now. We're mainly operating in the oil and gas and utilities industry, and we've done a number of kind of very, very challenging, complex inspection tasks with our UAVs. I will apologise in advance that I'm introducing another acronym here. The industry standards probably RPAS. We call them ROAVs because the oil and gas industry has been using remote vehicles underwater. We call them ROVs for many, many years. So when we're trying to explain what we're doing to our customers, if you say that what we're operating is an ROV, but it's flying ROV, not an underwater ROV, it instantly helps to bridge the kind of gap between people's understanding of drones and this is a tool for inspection. So they're not thinking about a thing that's launching missiles. We've done about 10,000 commercial flights so far. That's included inspections of about 2,500 transmission towers, about 250 flares, hundreds of chimneys, and a number of survey jobs. So why do you want to inspect an asset? If you're operating something like an oil rig or a petrochemicals plant, you want to keep it running. To do that effectively, you've got to understand the condition of that asset. Now, I've used an oil rig here as an example, but most facilities have tall structures in them, so these are the parts of a facility that tend to be difficult to inspect, so you have to use some sort of access technique. Now, at the moment, the current kind of methods for doing that are, here you've got manned helicopter, scaffolding, steeple, I think there's this button stuck on this thing, steeple jacks, mobile elevated work platforms, so like a mobile crane, there's some crazy guys in the corner there and a basket up next to a flare stack. And then for inspection, predominantly the most prevalent access method is rope access, so that was my background. I used to do industrial abseiling for about 10 years, which is where the whole idea of using remote vehicles for inspection came from. Now, why would you want to use a remote vehicle instead of doing it the traditional way? Obviously, there's efficiency, cost savings, all that sort of stuff, which I'll cover a little bit in a moment. But one of the biggest things, certainly from oil and gas companies and utilities companies' point of view, is trying to improve health and safety. Falls from height actually account for the biggest proportion of industrial fatalities, and that's pretty much the same in every single country. I've got the statistics from the UK up there, but there's almost 40 people killed in 2013, 2014, and if you could reduce working at height maybe by even 5%, you'd actually have an impact on health and safety. But the question you've got to ask yourself, are RPAS operations adequately safe? We'll maybe cover that in a wee bit. So these are the types of structures that we're currently inspecting at the moment. Flare towers, transmission towers, so electricity pylons, wind turbines, chimneys, dams, and offshore. Anyway. So this is a video case study, basically, to give you a little bit of an idea about our, bit of an idea about what we actually do as an operation. So this particular job that we were asked to do was for one of the 6 super majors. We had a whole different multi-scope of inspection to do on the oil platform. One of the tasks that was specifically challenging from the previous inspection was inspecting the underside of the oil platform. It had taken a 6-man rope access team 14 weeks to complete the previous inspection. We did that part of the work scope in 2 days. So massive kind of efficiency saving. One of the other kind of key areas as well that you need to inspect on an oil platform is the flare. That's a critical safety system. Inspecting it when it's live is very, very challenging. You have to either use a manned helicopter or shut the plant down, which you then run into tens of millions of pounds potentially in shutdown costs. So being able to inspect it while it's live is quite compelling business case for the oil and gas operators. The other thing as well that makes this technology appealing to the oil and gas, and especially the offshore oil and gas industry, is that its versatility of operation. You can operate it off a boat, you can go onto the platform. Most oil platforms have been under-designed in terms of their accommodation, so you want to try and reduce having to send people out to actually do inspection work. So I think that's just about coming to an end, the video. This is all live feed from the UAV. Just about finished. Okay, just I mentioned most of this during the video, but just to paint a picture of what the kind of that project did for the client, you can kind of see. So I'm going to move on to regulation. Emmanuel covered quite a lot of this already. Obviously, your experience of operating before it was even regulated was quite interesting. That suddenly countries banned operation. Quite narrow-minded, certainly from the aspect of what we're doing. it's an improvement in health and safety, trying to introduce RPAS for inspection. Taking the UK's as an example, they've got quite a light touch approach. It's been very permissive. It's allowed, certainly from my point of view, it's allowed our business to grow very well. However, as Emmanuel touched on in the previous presentation, doing a 3-day training course and then having a very, very limited flight test, does that then make you qualified for doing industrial inspection applications or high-risk tasks? Legally, you'd be allowed to do it, but whether you're competent or not, and there's no kind of structure in current regulations to take that into account. But luckily, our customers, especially the oil and gas companies, have experienced this in other areas, maybe rope access and underwater ROV operations. When they started to come in, they want to have a safe system of work that they know is fit for purpose for the tasks that they're trying to operate. So the aviation groups of the 6 super majors have formed a working group themselves to actually try and create their own set of rules for operating UAVs. Touched on before, different countries seem to have different regulations. It's very frustrating as a small business when you're trying to operate in multiple different countries. You've passed through a number of hoops in one country, you've operated safely. Why can you not just transfer that knowledge and process directly into another country's operation when you're operating for the same customer but just in a different geography? Having some sort of harmonisation in regulation is going to be very important for the growth of this industry. So operating a remote vehicle in an industrial environment, it's challenging. They are aircraft, albeit very, very small, but like most tools, if they're incorrectly used, can be dangerous. So at the moment, in the UK, you do a 3 or 4 day course with a qualified entity. This is what kind of a visual metric of what we do. So the first box, that's you got your permission for aerial work. You've done your 3-day course. You come in, work for Cyberhawk. The first sort of 0 to 50 flights, we call that level 1. So that would be aerial photography tasks. So flying in an open environment, taking a photograph of a new construction site. You're not flying close to a structure. It's not complex piloting skill. It's very, very different sort of piloting skill set from any other kind of thing out there. So the next 50 to 250 flights will put people into a basic inspection environment, and that'll be a low pressure, maybe a building inspection or a transmission line inspection where there's no plant and machinery around you and lots of people, etc., that can add other pressures. The final level of an inspection, so we then take people into an industrial facility like an oil refinery, and then the final level is offshore facilities. So it takes us almost a year to train a pilot up to a standard where we would send them offshore. This is not in any way the answer to a training program. This is our experience with the technology in the certain state that it's in at the moment. But as technology improves and gets better, more reliable, as a business, taking a year to train somebody to do that operation it's not it limits our growth. So we want to at the same time keep an eye on technology, and hopefully that will shorten the amount of time it takes to get the experience, so move towards autonomy. Future of where the technology is going, certainly from an inspection point of view, the next phase for us is to be able to actually land on stuff, touch it, test it, and complete this sort of the further rungs of the inspection pyramid. At the moment we do visual inspection, thermography. The definition is general visual inspection, something that you can maybe see over the other side of the room. Close visual inspection, something you can touch. So we can get the same kind of quality as a close visual inspection, but we can't touch something and say, well, that piece of metal's X amount of millimetres thick. That's the next kind of stages in the sort of inspection process. Emmanuel touched on it. I've got a slightly different opinion on size of systems. In the oil and gas industry, they're very, very risk averse. We use a system that's under 2 kilograms. I would like it to get smaller and smaller because it makes the safety case for what we do easier to get through. It's different horses for different courses. It depends on the operation that you're trying to do. But if you're flying in an industrial environment, you want the piece of equipment to have a low potential energy if anything does go wrong. And I think we'll, certainly from our point of view, moving towards a fully autonomous systems would have a huge benefit for our business. And it would hopefully there'd be some permissive regulatory environment that can happen. So just to conclude quickly, RPAS, ROAVs, whatever you want to call them, they're a very useful tool. They're gaining credibility within the energy industry. The current applications are broadening, and what's required is a harmonisation and regulation. Probably globally would be good, but even if Europe could get their regulation the same, it would be an enormous benefit to companies like mine and Emmanuel's. Correct training and competency is critical for safe operation. At the moment, it's a one-shoe-fits-all, usually in a country that has a permissive UAV working environment. But one thing to keep in mind with any regulation is you've got to future-proof it. The technology is moving on at such a blistering rate that something that if you put something that's too bounded, then you kind of, it can take a long time to dig yourself out of that hole. So, thanks for that. That's me done.
I don't know, it might just be me, but I think a man who decides that using RPAS instead of doing industrial abseiling, there's a story there. I'm sure there's a story there. It could be very interesting to hear. Our final speaker in the presentation section of the show is a local boy, made good, Edgars Rozentals from Helico. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's really an honor to speak here and share some of our ideas. And yeah, I'll be touching basically AirDog. We are a company that's manufacturing, or we are actually starting our manufacturing in the nearest couple of months of our products. But as you saw, I suppose most of you were on the field for a demonstration. So shortly to repeat, what is AirDog? It's a consumer drone. So this is a big difference here. We're building consumer drones that are not meant to be used for any commercial purposes at all. And I think these recreational or personal drones are the least regulated at this moment. But it doesn't mean that there is no need for certain regulation and ways to increase safety of flying these systems. So, before I start, let me introduce myself. So I'm Edgars Rozentals. I'm founder and CEO of AirDog. We are our R&D center is a lab located here in Riga, Latvia, and that's where everything started. But now we're moving our business division and developing it in California, United States. And my past, since year 2000, for 15 years, I've been entrepreneur in IT sector. So currently, myself and AirDog, we are members of organization called UAVSA, or Unmanned Autonomous Vehicle Systems Association, which is founded by Tesla Foundation. And members of this organization are different individuals and corporations, which are unmanned systems industry players. And basically, some of these concepts I will be sharing have been inspired by a good friend of mine, Stuart Bullard, which is also a co-founder and a great thinker and innovator in different fields, including aviation, and who is also a member of advisory board of our company. What did I do now? What happened, guys? Okay. Okay, this is how it works. Okay, my fault. Sorry. So, so let me speak about challenges that we see regulating especially small RPAS or UAVs, or let's call them small drones, whatever. Flights of these vehicles are really short and perform very often. And it's really impossible for me as a private person to go and get allowance or coordinate all the documentation, where I'll be flying, what I'll be filming. So there has to be some way of doing this in a better way than we think and how it's being done in traditional aviation. Very soon, there will be a lot more UAVs than real planes. And if guys who are here representing commercial UAVs, these are sold to professionals, mostly more or less trained people. Then consumer drones are sold in huge numbers. Those are hundreds of thousands of units already. I don't have exact figures, but I know for sure that there are a lot, and these numbers will increase with every year. So if we are talking about risks of having a drone creating some kind of trouble or safety issue, I would say consumer drones will be the ones that you will see most often in these incidents. Not the ones that are operated, expensive ones that are operated by professional staff. There is very little time actually to do something about this, to regulate, because technology is there and it has developed much faster than anybody expected. So there are no years to develop regulation basis for this. So we have to act, or we as manufacturers and you as regulatory forces, or sorry my English, we have to join our forces and be fast. This is what I already touched. Users of these drones, small drones, are really less educated and less responsible operators. And I don't think it would be logical to put too large responsibility actually, and also to force people to study or certify themselves just to film themselves while they surf on a lonely beach or snowboard during heliboarding, right? Yeah, another problem is identification of vehicles and operators. The last incident in Paris showed that in a good way, or in a bad way actually. That's the problem. Somebody is flying but nobody knows whose vehicles are those and who are the operators. So we believe that we have to think about very simple and effective and automated ways how to regulate these smaller or even larger flying robots, so to say, but it has to be really simple because there are a lot of them and you can talk to every owner and train it and etc. So my main point, I think this is nothing new, and I hope you already understand and everybody understands that, but it's just to stress it once again that I strongly believe that it needs new approach and mindset when you are thinking about unmanned aerial vehicles than you would think about traditional aviation. It's a different thing. It has a lot of things that are common, but there are even more which are not common. Starting from the fact that these are computerized flying robots. They are not flown by human. Even in case of remotely piloted drone over Iraq, which is flown by somebody in United States sitting in a cozy office and shooting at the people somewhere in another place in the world, most of the decisions are made by the computer. All the flight is being stabilized. Humans are just making a couple of decisions when really to attack, not attack, land, take off, etc. But anyways, this is computer. So, which means that there is a huge information technology and telecommunication component into this. And this brings also new risks into the game, which include remote virtual hijacking risks and possibilities, which are almost impossible in case of traditional aviation, because there is a pilot which can always take the steering wheel and fly manually. So let me quickly share what we as AirDog are already doing, because we understand that we have to start doing some practical things to increase the safety level. And let me then continue with sharing the concept that we're working on together with UAVSA organization in the United States. So our first steps that we're taking is we're developing a software-based obstacle avoidance solution, which includes basically no-fly and fly zone mapping. Let me show you the screenshot in the next slide that will explain you everything. And this is all, in our case, it is user-generated, our client-generated. It's cloud-stored, and it's scalable. Yeah, and it includes avoidance decision-making algorithms. So I think there's all yeah, this is presentation without an image with older version. Sorry for that. So basically, to explain you what we're doing. So we're developing an application where our users, but remember, those are action sports enthusiasts. So, for example, when I go to my motocross track to avoid hitting some building, power line, or a forest nearby, so I can take my smartphone and quickly, with my finger in a Google map, I can quickly create no-fly zones in my area. And when I will be riding around, the drone, which is following and filming me, knows how to avoid these obstacles that are there. So this is something how we are solving very practical issues with our product. So let's talk about the concept I want to share, on which UAVSA org you are welcome to explore the website later on. So we're talking here about how this could be brought to a next level. How we could create a system that actually could be built into every single consumer and commercial or any other type of unmanned aerial system that could help practically. I'm talking here more about technology, how we can in pretty easy ways at least take care of those large amounts, massive amounts of consumer drones that are out there, whose users are really not caring about all the legislation that will be taking place in the future. So, and the idea is that there needs to be created a dynamic geofencing system, or it's called a digital wall. I'll be showing it later. So in this case, if in our case users are those crazy guys who are riding motorbikes and want to avoid obstacles simply in their way, in their tracks, in this case users should be CA, FA, police, municipalities, different government institutions and other organizations. Those should be the ones who are determining dynamically when and where is restricted airspace, when and where, from what time of the day you won't be able to fly, where you can't fly at all. And these drones will tell you if you are in that zone, they will simply not take off, and you don't need to know even if there's any are there any local rules that say that or not. So you even cannot break them. So, and here we're talking that we need a standardization of communication protocols and frequencies, etc., and vehicle and operator identification. This all has to be standardized. So, and when I talk about this to illustrate to you the concept, so digital wall is what we mean. For example, if there is happening a marathon, this is just an example, so don't take it too literally. But for example, there is a marathon. Otherwise, would be no problems to fly in this area. We know when it's happening, police setting this digital wall around the area and setting that there are no drones allowed from this date to that date, from this, even you can add time, hours. And if there's any drone, and the same way you can create restricted areas that are permanently restricted for flying over at any moment. Because we have to understand that simple user, average Joe, who is buying a drone for $1,000, he will not really care, first of all, and he will not really even want to examine what are the local rules if he can fly in middle of Manhattan or not. So his drone simply must not be able to take off and will be, I would say, 95 or 97% safe. Of course, there will be people who will figure out how to break that rule. In case, this is how we imagine how it should be happening. So this illustrates that as soon as the vehicle approaches no-fly zone, actually the system itself tells it how to perform course correction and return back to the operator, or even if operator still somehow tries to enter the no-fly zone, local authorities can force, even automatically, hijacking of these vehicles and land them at dedicated authorities' place. So this very simple principle, how I think that every drone basically is a small computer, and telling every manufacturer out there, add at $15 worth 3 or 4G modem, which can communicate at all times over the even existing mobile network infrastructure. This could be really a great way how we could avoid these really unnecessary and unwanted incidents where these small personal drones are involved. So the last thing is we believe that there should be some kind of registry. When you buy one of these vehicles or drones, you start with registering yourself and registering your vehicle as well. And this should also put at the higher level your feeling of responsibility than you really feel that, oh, maybe here's something, I have some responsibility, because now you go just to a store and buy one of these things, go home and you fly it. So that's, and this yeah, is absolute necessity. So to conclude everything, I think the last thing I want to say is that us manufacturers of these vehicles, we are, I think, interested in setting these regulations and tools for regulating all this as soon as possible. We really, as other speakers said, we really don't want to see absolute bans, because with consumer drones, you can forbid commercial drone usage, but it's almost impossible to forbid consumer drone usage. There are no ways how you can actually physically control it. Of course, if you find a commercial shot with commercial drone, you can find who did it. But it's not the story with, so banning is not solution. And we have the data. We have lots of data that we'll be gathering over the near future. We know everything, where people use these drones, how they use, how often they fly, where they fly. So I think we are ready to collaborate with all of you who are responsible for issuing these regulations. So let's just work together and make the future of drones more safe. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Edgar, and thank you, gentlemen, generally. Let me just quickly go around to make sure we've got the right scale here. Your members, on the whole, if I may say, represent the manufacturers of quite large RPAS drones. I'm not quite sure what the right word is anymore. I'm more confused now. Thanks very much. I'm more confused now than before. But your members make, generally speaking, the quite large ones. Just, we don't have there's only the one microphone, so if you could just nod or shake your head for the yes/no questions, I'd be grateful. You, on the other hand, Malcolm, you don't manufacture the drones at all. You simply take off the shelf commercial drones and then have a use for them, a demonstrably useful use for them. You, Emmanuel, do you build your machines as you both build and everything?
Like Apple computers.
And then you sell them as well, like Apple computers. I'm sure there's nice things we can say about them. And you, Edgar, you manufacture and then simply sell. So we've got service providers and we've got manufacturers and we've got both big and small. I was really taken by your comments, Emmanuel. I think everybody almost made the comments about weight and size. And size matters, apparently. We had sort of two views, though. I mean, don't hold back, Emmanuel. I wasn't quite... You were saying size does not matter, it's irrelevant, aren't you? Now you might like to use the mic. That wasn't a yes/no question.
Yes, of course it matters, but it's about safety embedded in the design, manufacturing, and operation. If you can sit in a big airplane that is so damaging if it does something wrong, you go into it because you know all the process, from piloting to the manufacturing, etc., has been respected and respecting rules that are 100 years old. So if you respect those rules, then things can be done with bigger machine in an environment that you might mentally believe. You have the perceived risk and you have the real risk. When actions are necessary, like a nuclear power plant needs to be observed by something that has a payload, a decent payload, or some ruggedized system that will be going through the radioactivity. You need something probably heavier. You have to accept that. And if you ban...
But by heavier there, you mean a heavier regulation?
Platform, a heavier platform.
Heavier regulation.
Now, about smaller platform, I saw a quadrotor video flying on the highway, opposite direction of the traffic. So that means 120 kilometers per hour for the cars, 50 kilometers per hour. This is 200, close to 170. Hitting a truck, flying so low, hitting a truck, being dragged by the traffic, and the guy took his at the end you see it, recovering it, and you see his face. And this is small, but with the speed of the cars, etc., it becomes dangerous. So you have to look at really embedded system for general public, for small system, that can be as dangerous as another one, as a bigger one. Embedded system that will forbid any non-professional user that feel freedom with it. Actually, this is why we the American spirit was about the freedom that the cars could bring to people. You know, cars at the beginning were big and you could go everywhere with it. And the car industry became big because of that. Drone give that sense of freedom, space, going into space, now for everybody. So the common user, without having professional ethic of work, even with small machine, you know, 50 gram or what, 100 gram of C4 explosive can really harm a lot.
Can ruin your day.
This is very small. So if I don't want to use the word terrorist here.
No,
if you're a terrorist, you go for the small machine that is lightweight, and then you can harm more than an ethic with the big one.
But just to pick up on what Emmanuel said, Edgars, for example, the issue. We started by I asked the question about, is it weight? And Edgars said, no, it's actually whether or not the pilot's trained, almost. Is that, what is the right basis to make rules? Is the right basis to make rules, if not on weight, is it on the professionalism of the pilot, if that's the right word, the professionalism of the operator? Is it on the job that's being done? What is the right if we're talking to regulators here, what rule frame should we be using? Sorry,
It's not a simple answer.
I'm sorry. In which case, can I just ask us to kick it round? Edgars, what's your view? Of course not. That's why they have regulators.
Yeah, this is really a tough one. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, definitely. What I am advocating is opinion that average user like for the products that I represent should simply shouldn't be able to take off and fly over that highway. That is structure, and you can limit.
That I get, and I'm very very relaxed about that and quite supportive, and I'm sure everyone else is as well. But my question was not, but that's a regulatory system, if I may say. It's very French, that regulatory system. We're just going to tell you what you can't do. No French in the room, got away with it. The issue, though, if you're a regulator and you're making a set of rules, far be it from me to tell the regulators in the room how to do their job, but I'd have thought the worst way to start is by saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. What's the framework? My question is, what's the right basis for thinking through what the regulation should be? Obviously, there's no-fly zones, or, don't fly here today because there's a very big football match on. Another football reference, Mr. Machado. But is it about the functionality? Is it about the performance?
When we started, there was no regulation. And so the rule I applied was, I consider myself to be inside. What would you accept? And then others are flying with me. So or people there. So it's an extension of myself, what I would accept me to do to others and what others would accept me to do. So that's the concept. After that, you can build rules that are detail-oriented, depending of if it's a general public. I would really trust embedded safety system on board, related to radio signal strength, RSSI, so limited through the RSSI to a certain range, and automatic digital world that will be embedded in the system, refreshed by software. Let's say the system every month needs to go to the internet. If not, it will not take off. Connect to a database that will refresh all those safety areas that are to be respected, and it's embedded into the system. Your iPhone has already a way to know where you are. You just activate or not.
But with respect,
activated that way in any unmanned system for general.
But Emmanuel, with respect, if I can mix my transport metaphors even further, that train's already left the station, hasn't it? There's already millions of small drones for sale that don't have this updatable capacity. So, Malcolm, what do you think? What is the basis? Should we be going on function, on performance, on risk?
Well, as everyone else has sort of tried to answer this question, it's a very, very complex question to answer. I'll not kind of touch on the hobbyist side of things, because there's some pretty strong opinions there, and it's not really an area that we're focused in. But you have to base your operation and what you're going to do on the risk of that particular operation, and there won't be a one-size-fits-all kind of approach.
Okay, but that's
So,
great. Thank
yeah.
you. Just let me interrupt for a moment. There won't be a one-size-fits-all approach, but should we be focusing on the risk, the damage? What is?
Well,
I mean, if you're a regulator, what should you be aiming at?
Well, to take the UK as an example, and what's advised in CAP 722 and the operational envelope that you're supposed to be able to work in commercially, that's not you cannot go out with that, but if you want to, you have to apply to do that on a case-by-case basis, which is it can take quite a long time. But now you can do this thing called a kiosk, where if you want to operate out with the current regulation, you can get a specific exemption that maybe covers you as an operator if you've demonstrated you've got a strong enough safety case to do that, and your equipment's reliable, your pilots are properly trained for the task that they're going to do. So I don't have a conclusive answer for you, but
Right.
that's our experience of the regulation is there. Sometimes it stops you from what you want to do immediately, but if you can convince the authority that's regulating it that you have the skill, competence and track record to do something out with the regulation, and there's that flexibility there, that's very, very pragmatic way of maybe thinking about it. But
Alberto, what do your members think?
Let's start from a couple of considerations that are across the RPAS community. Also, the smallest ones are sophisticated assets.
Yes.
The second is that safety and the security are two embedded concepts in RPAS. Of course, we have to distinguish due to the fact that every one of that can pose a potential hazard to other actors in the airspace, and also problems of crash, of course. But we have to distinguish that, the impact of RPAs of 1 kilo is very different from the impact of 1 ton. So this is to tell that it's difficult to state rules, but for sure the fragmentation of the population into different MTOWs.
I love acronyms.
And it's for sure a concept, in my opinion, and also the CONOPS, the operational use. If we operate in an urban environment, of course, we have to take more care than if we are patrolling an ocean. So MTOW is one driver. The operation use is another one, in my opinion.
Okay, that's very. That is not what the rest of the table is saying, is it? Because MTOW, we're back to size, we're back to weight matters. So should we be regulating by weight? What's the weight of your normal device, Edgars?
Well, it's 1.8 kilos.
1.8 kilos.
Yeah.
And yours, Emmanuel, how heavy is yours?
20 to 25.
20.
If you let me
sorry.
answer maybe once again shortly, I had a time to think about the previous question. So,
do you want me to tell you now the next question?
No. Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. But I think maybe regulators could think from that perspective, that the less regulation you want and less responsibility, the more limiting areas and places in your possibility of flying should be. For example, if you're a recreational flyer, forget about any flying ever anywhere near urban areas, for example. If you want to fly there and film with even your small action camera equipped drone, you have to undergo some sort of certification. If you want to do inspection of something, I don't know, where people are working under or start filming movies, That's another level of responsibility. So maybe this could be, it's just my quick idea.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Help yourself. Yeah.
I've been there. When we started, everybody was comparing an helicopter like us to a lawnmower without protection, and it's extremely dangerous, etc. So it's a perceived risk. And you still have 800 people inside an airplane. Nobody perceives the risk when he's inside. Why? Because there's been education, trial and error through the aviation history. And people pay their life for that. So, of course, a regulator that is uneducated or ignorant is not a critic.
No, don't hold back. I mean, there's a whole room full of them here.
And there are many people involved, and we are so happy to be part of it. And there are very educated people at the same time. But when you are uneducated, you make a simple rule that is protecting you. Big umbrella. All right. We can do better, participating to that, and better than FAA in US and other countries.
Not setting the bar dreadfully high.
What we know, experience we build now, we can make it more detail-oriented law that is following really safety first, always safety first, and respect of others, and sound, etc. But according to the mission that is performed, according to the freedom of the user, the respect of freedom of others. I always respect those rules, freedom of others and freedom. So detail-oriented, looking at the detail. Not considering umbrellas as being the only way. Because umbrella, it's easy.
From the Mary
just
Poppins
forbid
school.
their activities like we have been through. I mean, we are suffering, really, financially. Because it's just an umbrella is easy for a regulator. If you want to make business and make people finding jobs, there was a meeting yesterday and this morning about how to find jobs in the European communities, how to better organize your way of to find new opportunities for people. We are really in the UAV world having an amazing potential in that field.
I'll come to that in a minute. There's a hint
the
for you.
regulation will be, it's like you have a big filter, nothing goes through, or you have a nice filter and you have a lot of potential executed.
All right. Okay, I'm going to have another try at getting the answer to the question. No, not at all. Nobody's fault. I'm obviously not asking it well. What about access to airspace? I mean, your members, and many of your members, and your graph, I particularly like the little flying saucer, by the way, at the very top. Your members are making devices that access airspace. You want to be treated by the air traffic control system as if you're just another player, like every other aircraft in the airspace. Is that a fair summary? Do you think that's how we should be going forward, that we should be finding a way to integrate RPAS, whatever the word is, into the standard controlled airspace? Alberto?
I think that if we are into an airspace, we have to comply with the rules of the airspace. I mean, we cannot stay inside and stay outside, because it's so. I think that there are common rules to follow if we are manned or we are a manned vehicle.
Okay.
Again, we have to distinguish if we are making operations that are very local and they do not interfere at all with the ATMS, because there are cases. I mean, look at what happens in the military field, which is more advanced, because RPAs were born there. In the theater, there are no rules. You go there and you fly. Because they consider there are not risks from this point of view. If we operate in an area with an high density, also if we operate a small RPS, we have to comply. I mean, there is a sort of, let me say, baseline we have to comply with. This is also related to the process of manufacturing. I mean, the education to fly. I mean, the pilot, and I can add also the life cycle, the maintenance. We have to maintain also the smallest ones in a good way. You talked about manuals, you talked about the enrollment into a register. I mean, that's very important for, I mean,
you could fill this room with the regulations that regulate aviation. many times over. But so what you're saying is if you go up into controlled airspace, then as far as everyone should be concerned, the normal rules apply. So maybe we should be regulating by height. Are we talking about regulating by altitude? I assume you don't go into controlled airspace, Malcolm, do you?
Yeah, no, most of our kind of operations are either within refineries or next to top structures. So,
So
they're typically areas where you wouldn't expect to see other aircraft, and other than the odd helicopter doing a line inspection, but that's usually Class G airspace. So we're not typically operating in the end of a runway or trying to integrate ourselves into commercial.
The model aircraft industry has rules, doesn't it, for things that it must do. Is there anyone from the model aircraft, a gentleman over here? What's the difference between a model aircraft and a drone? Are not model aircraft just drones? Hang on, we have a microphone, or we have a person who's apparently got a microphone. Here she is, and she's going to run it to you right now. This gentleman here, thank you. I mean, they're just early drone models, aren't they?
Yeah, I represent actually air sport pilots and the lower end of general aviation, but that does include the aeromodelers. And aeromodelling, of course, started more than 100 years ago. It's a well-practiced sport. It's very well controlled in certainly all the European countries I'm aware of which conduct aeromodelling.
What are the rules, if you don't mind?
The rules are national rules. They're not based on the European model because they're outside of European regulation. And certainly I'm from the UK, and I know that in the UK there are not a lot of detail rules because much of it is self-regulated under a framework, under a national organisation. But the things like the radio frequencies, where they can operate, how they operate, the airworthiness, all the rest of it, it's a very well developed and safe sector. I mean, the statistics are very safe.
Okay, but
So just to finish your question.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
To me, going out to the airfield today, with no disrespect to the manufacturers who are there, they are just further advanced model aircraft. They have a lot of new technology on board in terms of GPS and all the rest of it, but the fundamentals are the same. And the point is, aeromodelling has developed over the years as a pretty safe operation, and its environment and where it operates.
But isn't then, don't get rid of the mic if you would, isn't then, hold on to the mic because I'm going to come back and ask you about sport in a moment, but isn't the other way to look at that you thought the demonstrations today were just advanced model aircraft? I mean, isn't the other way to say
I was being a bit.
No. Well, allow me to be a little bit facetious as well. Aren't model aircraft merely early stage drones?
Absolutely.
Okay, so.
My colleague there is just starting to disagree. I can see.
I like disagreement. It's good. But so you have a set of rules. I mean, my memory is you can only fly model aircraft in open spaces, line of sight.
But they can be in urban areas as well, but under certain control conditions.
So why don't we just use those rules? I mean, are we?
Well, I'm glad you brought me in at this stage. No, he's I'll give you a chance in a minute. You had half an hour earlier.
Yeah. You have seen my father, remember?
Yeah.
I've been there. Yes. I was there.
Literally.
So there's a big change. Like he knows more about it than anybody here. The big change is that model aircraft were aircrafts. And you had to go on a field if you want to be flying them because they need a runway, etc. It was the history of model aircraft. And helicopter started in 1970 when a German, Mr. Dieter Schlüter, flew the first time and he won the prize that was given for the first helicopter to fly. And this was manual flight, extremely difficult to fly. Only an airfield, like model airplane airfield, was suitable because one on two you would crash it. And then automatic pilot came in. Your cellular phone is equipped with those sensors to measure movement. And then processor became smaller, etc. And then suddenly, everybody could fly a machine, an helicopter, mostly multi-rotor. And it changed everything. Now you can fly it above your coffee table. I mean, those little multi-rotors. I mean, you can buy those for €20 at the airport, those very little ones. So now everybody, it was a dream. When I was starting to fly aircraft, never I could imagine I could fly such a small quad rotor in a room as small as your bedroom.
But are
so
we
it is changing completely. You cannot say you have a regulation already because now everybody can go to the hobby shop, buy a machine and fly it in his garden.
Yeah. Yes, please.
So
Have
that's
you-
why it's
Emmanuel?
difficult to regulate.
Yeah.
Have you been to the World Championships in this sport? Because you will see what you've just been describing.
We're doing competition with helicopters. I was Belgium champion and also gliders.
And an Oscar. I mean, wow.
So good.
The question for me is which was the more prestigious? You know, Belgium helicoptering or no?
I think what we're talking about is the principles.
Well,
here.
it is, and I'd quite like to challenge them again, or still with you, sir, if I may. The principle for model aircraft flying, you know, prototype drone flying, is very, very clear. It's in a field. Generally speaking, it's line of flight. That's sort of kind of what you do as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but let me share my humble opinion on this. I'm coming from model flyers as well. I enjoyed building more than flying, actually. I was crashing them pretty soon after building. And
now I'm feeling safe.
I was going to airfield every weekend. And the reason why I was going there was because of that community, other guys flying, to train my skills, to get them to the next level. But now, with a drone like AirDog or any other small drone, I have completely different motivation why I buy it and where I go. It's a flying camera. And it's about storytelling. These are stories that we are creating nowadays. These are tools how we are creating these stories. And to create a story, I want that view to take off from the bottom of Eiffel Tower, slowly ascend, go up and take that amazing view of Paris, for example. And that's what motivates me to do that in that particular place. I don't need that community anymore. My community now is consuming the content I'm creating.
An extension of yourself, free in the air, to see things differently than ever. Completely different than the model aircraft that I've been through in the beginning.
Can I just, I note your question there, Chris. Just while I'm going to keep, you know, boringly push away on some of these regulatory questions, access to the airspace. The sport aviation people, do they fly into controlled airspace?
Yes.
Right, okay. So then was my analysis correct? Once you're in controlled airspace, you must do it in accordance with the rules?
I think if I can be very brief on this.
Please.
In controlled airspace generally, and I'm talking, you know, across 28 plus 4 countries here, if you're flying in controlled airspace, you may, depending on the country and the nature of the airspace, need certain equipment which helps with electronic conspicuity.
Right.
But in uncontrolled airspace, there is still the see and avoid principle. And I'm here partly to defend that principle for
I can't start
those
to think why anyone would take the opposite to see and avoid. You know, see and collide seems like a bit of a loser of a strategy to me.
No, but the main reason is that if the RPS community, which, by the way, I'm not here to say that it's wrong. I think it's a fantastic growth area. But the principle is that in uncontrolled airspace, we've always had, this is talk about general aviation at the lower end particularly, the ability to fly in uncontrolled airspace, see and avoid. If we have the technology forced on us in the cockpit, there's a huge expense.
Okay.
And that's something which clearly we'd be unhappy about. But we have to find a solution. But that's the distinction between controlled and uncontrolled airspace.
Okay, thank you very much. If you'd be so kind as to push the microphone back 2 rows to Chris Graham. Chris is the UK information supervisor, and I'm just guessing that he's probably going to pick up on your point about every one of your devices is just a flying camera. I'm just guessing. You're not on, sorry. Still not working, sorry.
It is green.
There we go.
I've got it. I've mastered the technology. I'm the UK Information Commissioner. I'm sitting here with my Latvian colleague, who's the Data Protection Authority here in Latvia. The thing that we're finding very interesting as we hear the industry view, and I know we're discussing fundamental rights tomorrow, but it's interesting to get the industry perspective. To what extent are you focusing at all, because I haven't heard it, on the sort of manufacturer's responsibility vis-à-vis privacy concerns? Because we said most of these devices have got a camera on them. If you want the freedom from regulation to grow your very exciting business, what about some corporate social responsibility for the uses to which your devices can be put if abused? I mean, even if it was just a leaflet in the box explaining what the responsibilities are. More to be explained tomorrow, I know, but I haven't heard anything from the industry on the privacy side of this, apart from free as a bird, let's do our thing.
We are doing this since 25 years with clean record. 26 years with clean record. We have done everything. Why? Because I got a commercial pilot with IFR rating, and I was sitting in a plane knowing my life depends on what I do. And I respect what I do because I have the ethic of airman ethic. Education. This is part of responsibility. Education of the crew behind. Where I'm very insisting on. It's not automatic. Even if it's automatic, you still have an operator behind that can pull the plug. So education, and this is responsibility, and that's why in certain area. The name is segregated airspace, so it's really like a cage. It's a cage when you can express your freedom, but it's a cage. And the freedom is limited, of course, to the freedom of others, and I always keep on saying that. It's like he's saying, it's a camera. I did my thesis on the flying cam in a film school because it's a camera flying. It's yourself flying. Our logo is a flying man. It's yourself flying. And education is about men.
But Emmanuel, you and you, Malcolm, as well, of course, have small numbers of pilots who you train properly and away and above the requirements necessary set out by the rules. But Edgars, your customers, every single one of them is an untrained pilot, if that's not a contradiction in terms, or maybe just a tautology now that I think about it. But all of your customers are untrained pilots. They've got no education in this. They've got no sense of responsibility. What do you think of Chris's idea of at least putting a leaflet in the box that says, do understand the rules of privacy?
Absolutely. Well, simply my presentation was not covering these topics. It doesn't mean we're not thinking about that. Of course, educating our customers is the first and main thing that we'll be focusing on as soon as we'll start delivering our products. Regarding the privacy, I will not generalize, and I will still stick to Erdog's story. Privacy issues are not real issues in our case, because our camera is filming only the owner. You cannot turn it around and film somebody else. So there are no privacy issues because you can film only yourself, somebody that is wearing the tracking device and who is absolutely aware of being filmed. So if I understood the question correctly.
Wow, what a damn squib of an answer.
Sorry, I've got something to add here from a data protection point of view. Obviously, from what you've seen, most of our activities are in refineries, things like that. The people that are there know that this operation is happening. However, we've got one ongoing project where we're doing inspection in historic monuments, and there's sometimes members of the public there that end up getting photographed, and we've had to, as part of the contract, remove or redact all those pictures, take those people's faces out, and it's quite a time-consuming task, but you've got to kind of do that to comply with the Data Protection Act. You're capturing so much visual data in what you're doing that it is something that we need to think about. That's the first time that we've encountered it and had to actually do something about it, but it's now certainly on our radar. Yeah,
because it would be really humiliating to be seen at an historical monument, wouldn't it? I mean, imagine if word of that got out. What about you? What about you, Alberto? Sorry, you want to pass them up? What's your members' position on this?
Yeah, but before talking about privacy, I would like to tell something about the manufacturer's responsibility. I mean, we have to, as industry, to certify the asset. Of course, in accordance with the use, the MTOW, the rules. But we have to certify the asset, the process, the maintenance, as told before. I mean, this is a must to distinguish professional assets from toys. As far as the privacy is concerned, yes, they are flying cameras. And I think that we have to rule this fact, such as we are doing with the proliferation of the video control in the cities. I mean, it's something similar. Of course, if an authority is carrying out an operation national security, they must have different rules from the ones that are just flying for agricultural needs. That it's an operational use of the drone as well. But I mean, we have.
You're bringing us back.
The privacy is something that we want, but we want also to be protected against the terrorists and so on.
Sure.
So,
but interestingly, what you've sort of said is we need to have performance-based regulation, isn't it? The regulation, whether it's for privacy or anything else, partially depends on what the performance you're asking of the drone is. And that's, at one level, what you're saying too, Edgars, isn't it? You know, my machine only films the person wearing the device. So it's a sort of a performance-based thing. I happen to notice that Margus wants the microphone. Are you? I have it already. Well, all right. Wants the floor.
Thank you very much. Just to add one comment, maybe it was very fascinating to hear all the discussion, especially very good to hear in the beginning of this kind of a conference from the users and producers, rather than, let's say, do it the other way around, that first the regulators speak and then the users just walk out. So I think it's very nice and very good to have it this way. What is my reflection, very short one, is that we were discussing here how to approach regulation from the point of view of airspace, let's say height, put the limits or discuss it, or weight. I think they both will be challenged because the machines will be lighter and lighter because that's what the industry wants, and of course the technology provide that, and the capabilities will bring these small things higher and higher. So therefore, I think this is like you say, a gone train. But of course, these are very important considerations. I think one thing that I hear, and I didn't hear that's not a criticism, but I just, let's say, got into my mind, is the issue of numbers. I think this is something when we look at the different operations here today, flying cam or inspections or let's say, other professional applications, then still we have a limited number where the separation between either, let's say, the traditional aircraft or between the two drones is quite big. The only, let's say, small separation or the question of separation between the two is when we talk about the consumer applications. And here, of course, we were talking about immediately restricting, but going to somewhere. But the question of separation between the two aircraft, imagine there are 10,000 in Latvia tomorrow or in Riga. So the separation issue becomes a safety issue. So I think I would like to throw this in the air, because today we're still very, let's say, unitary. We're alone in here. But as was rightly said, it's not only in the consumer side, but also in the professional side, where we have more and more drones because they just simply cost less than a pilot.
Absolutely. Well,
so therefore, the separation issue for me is one fundamental matter that I think we as regulators need to think about. Thank you.
Absolutely. Separation, though, is always a safety issue, isn't it? Because the alternative is they're not separate, and then it's very unsafe. Sorry, one other issue, though, that Margus's comments provoked in my mind, and I assume you guys have got. I'll be interested to know, Edgars, what you do. What you do about things like insurance, because if these drones start colliding, I mean, or if they, heaven forfend, they fall on a person or something like that, is there a need for an insurance scheme? Should it be like motor cars with mandatory third-party compensation? What's...
Yeah.
Go first.
Well, certainly, insurance was actually one of the most challenging things when we started doing what we were doing, was trying to get an insurer to understand using a UAV to fly in a high-value industrial asset. Our customers demanded that we had insurance to say, well, this thing flies off and hits something and shuts down the plant. Are you insured? So, yeah, the question of how I think the insurance industry is actually starting to wake up and understand RPAS operations now. There's actually 2 or 3 providers in the UK alone that will cover commercial kind of
Emmanuel.
operations.
I think you want to say something.
We have been there because we were in US. Our insurance cost us $500 US, and I'm talking 15 years ago. The insurance cost us $500 US per year. And then a competitor came in saying, I will do the same as Frank, and he hit somebody live on television, 5,000 the next day. 50,000 the insurance the next day. Because there were only a few people. And an insurance company will be better if there are many people paying for, and then they can absorb the cost of any crash to that community of people using it. So that's not, for me, so no problem. The quantity of people paying for getting insurance will make these things go like big aircraft. No problem with that. About the size, the reason why now you have more small ones is because they go through the net of regulation. It's not because of the people, everybody wants small ones. We are now solicited by a company like in Northwest Australia for open mine pit inspection. They don't care about the weight. They care about the fact they spend 2 million euro per year with full-size helicopter to do the job, and we can do it for 600,000 today, euro. They care about that, and they will get it done. And it's flying above an area that they don't care about the size. They care about how much money they can save with a technology that is safer and more efficient to do what they want. And there will be always technology going, heavier, whatever, or range that wants to be achieved, or flight time that needs to be achieved that will require a bigger machine. It's just because regulation now between 25 and 150 or higher does not exist. This is why today there's not lots of manufacturing in that field, and we're right in the middle there.
I've passed the microphone.
I'm sorry to be so harsh, but yeah.
I've still got a vision of an Australian miner from northwest and Western Australia handling euros, but it's just a personal thing. But what do you do for insurance, Edgars?
I absolutely agree that insurance costs should go down as soon as the market will grow. In our case, I believe the users should be the ones that are ensuring their responsibility because.
But do you provide for that as you sell your systems?
No. What we think, and one of my points in the presentation was that at least how we are trying to solve it locally for ourselves is identification of vehicles and their owners. In our case, when you buy AirDog, first thing you do is you create your account and register your vehicle and attach it to your account. At least we will know which exact vehicle belongs to whom. And actually, this makes useless to steal them. If you steal it, you cannot sell it to somebody else. That's a safety issue against stealing, for example. But I think that it's the same with a car. If you buy a car and if you crash into somebody, it's the owner who is responsible for that. You cannot force a manufacturer to insure every case where somebody crashes into somebody's property. But the problem with drones here, and especially consumer drones, is the lack of possibilities how to identify. You can crash drone, you can, kill someone and just get lost from the place. And nobody will be able to tell who was the owner.
You could fly a Serbian flag into a football stadium and cause a bit of a row.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, now, what a surprise. Peter, would you...
Finally.
No. I almost think that's a world record.
I have
1 hour,
waited
55
very
minutes.
long.
Yeah, and we've only got 5 minutes and I've got 2 more questions. There's a big hint.
Okay, now, insurance. We have tried using a major insurance company in France to find out if his private third-party liability insurance would cover him if he bought a toy, an expensive toy, in a department store.
And what's the answer?
We've been waiting for 2 months.
Oh, that's quick. Well, I should introduce you to my
this
insurance
is important
company.
for him.
No, I agree entirely. It's absolutely something that we have to discuss. And the issue.
Point.
Oh, is this coming out as a book?
Excuse me?
Is this coming out as a book? Carry on.
Okay. Now, we go to normal insurance that everybody requires. There is a basic minimum, legal minimum in Europe. However, there is not a viable business case to be made for an insurance company to get involved with insurance.
I wonder to what extent that's because we don't report incidents. And unless there's data, insurance companies can't calculate that, can't
Let me give you
specify their risk.
Let me explain. You take France, the biggest amount of officially registered operators in Europe. There's over 1,000. If each of these guys would pay 1,000 euros, which they're not paying, you would only bring in a million. Now, the minimum liability is 860,000.
Right.
So you have one accident,
Yep.
and of course, all the guys are not going to be insured by the same company.
But that, of course, has always been the problem in aviation. Any proposal to have a passenger compensation fund falls over after one accident. It's situational. Thank you. I am going to move on merely in the interest of time. I had two more questions for you, gentlemen. The first one is two-pronged. Where do you see the industry in 10 years, and in 5 years and in 10 years? That's question one. And then question two is, what do you want from this room full of regulators? So, shall we start with you, Alberto? Why not? Let's go back around the table. Those two questions, because then it's nearly quarter time, football reference.
Yeah, I mean, from the potential market standpoint, the forecast is very interesting because
Thank you, Peter, if you could carry on.
The forecast tell us about a CAGR of this business of a two-digit in the next 10 years if we are able to fly,
right.
Of course.
And is that what you want from the regulators, the ability to fly?
This is connected with the possibility to fly in non-segregated area. The military market is a different story, but the use of military assets for, let me say, paramilitary or governative tasks as the immigrant control, the search and rescue, the surveillance, I mean, not in the battlefield, is an issue that is related, again, with the possibility to access the airspace.
Right. Thank you. Malcolm?
Yeah, certainly from my point of view in the industry that we're in, we've done some calculations on the total addressable market and what's there, and we reckon it's about, for industrial inspection, just in Europe alone, it's around about $1 billion a year, probably by 2018. As the technology improves and we can do more and more tasks, that market will grow. And this is maybe a bit of a kind of curveball about the way of design philosophy from asset design. If you look at the subsea industry, all subsea assets are now designed to be operated and maintained by remote vehicles. I think the same thing will happen in design philosophy for building structures, oil refineries, whatever, pylons in the future, that they'll be actually designed with the operation in mind to be done by a remote vehicle. As far as the technology goes, I see things getting smaller, lighter, and more capable, moving towards autonomy. That's what do I want from the regulators?
What do you want from this room full of regulators?
A framework that is harmonised throughout, I mean, first of all throughout Europe and then throughout the world. Take a blueprint from either the UK's current regulation or someone. It works well. It's been pretty good.
So within Europe, if I can summarise that, within Europe you're looking for standard rules. You don't want 28 rules, you want one rule.
Standardisation, so that you know what you've got to do to operate in a European country, so you can go between borders and
or across borders.
Across borders, without having to do individual applications in every country, and open the industry up a lot more, I think.
Right. Emmanuel, 5 and 10 years from now, and what do you want?
Well, the technology evolution pace has passed the sound barrier now. So, meaning things happen without you knowing that it's happening. So that makes the difficulty for foreseeing the future. But the digital world is there. Aviation is old. The aviation has to capture that digital world that actually drones are capturing better, because young people are now educated with that technology and they get it fast. The automatic air traffic control is on the way. I heard $2 billion US for Boeing to develop something. I heard something like that a few years. So they are on the way, but I hope they will not beat us there. Because harmonization, and that's part of what I really insist, harmonization is important. We all speak English here. We are all having our own culture, but we have to speak English. Imagine with translator, etc. So, well, harmonization is really key. And big difference, unfortunately, between professionals and hobby. Hopefully that gap with the freedom that offers to buy something and to go full speed and go up, that has to be, the solution is in embedded safety in the system. Like he talked about, a digital wall, limited range, and having certified, I mean, as soon as you buy one, you will be, you know you are logged, you know you are somebody could catch you for what you do, responsibility. And lastly, education. We know, everybody knows when the traffic light is red, you have to stop. But you remember the guy with the red flag walking in front of the car? We have been a long way, and there are still radars on highways.
You've obviously never been to Naples.
Since I'm really far from legislation, so I won't be commenting on that side. I have no idea where it will take us in 5 or 10 years, but I would like to comment what's my vision. I think in 5 years, we'll finally, the society in general, emotionally, will finally, I think, accept that and realize the value of drones and unmanned technologies, how much value they can bring by saving lives, helping do things in agriculture more in much greener ways. Finally stop spraying those crops with those planes. And in general, acceptance of the drones will be in much better so to say condition. And technology-wise, I think in 5 years we will finally realize in which industries what value really drones can bring. Now there are a lot of talks about drones in agriculture, and nobody really can give hard proof. What can you really do with them? There are ideas and concepts. So I think in 5 years we finally will be clear with that, and we will have a couple of examples in every possible industry how drones can be applied there. But in 10 years, I think, finally, we will start seeing, I don't see it happening faster, drones that fly in urban areas, deliver goods, do that stuff. All that's overhyped currently. I think there is a long way until we get there. Well, I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe it will happen in 5 years, but I don't see it happening that fast. So in 10 years, drones will be, there will be no day when you will not see 10 drones at least in the skies. I think so.
Well, you see 10 drones in the sky now. Of course, they're called aeroplanes. But just before we finish, I've got 2 administrative issues that I have to tell you about. The first one, because Mickey's big hand has swung up to 6, so we have to finish, I'm afraid. I could have kept talking for some time. Most people who know me know I could have kept talking forever. The first is that the dinner this evening starts at 6:30 at the Small Guild, which is about a 10-minute walk away. A thoroughly charming building. It's a 10-minute walk back into the old town, and people will be downstairs at 6:15 and 6:20 or whatever to start to lead groups of people across. It's not very far. It's not very warm outside though, nevertheless. So just to warn you of that. And the second thing is we restart tomorrow, the second half, at another football reference. We restart tomorrow in the room over there. So we won't be back here tomorrow. We'll be in a much bigger room, which I hope is good news in terms of your stuff and sight lines and so forth. So having said all those things, it only is left to me to ask you to join me in thanking Alberto, Malcolm, Emmanuel and Edgars. Thank you. Have a good evening.